Welcome and welcome back to Really Legal. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. So Donald Trump back in court today. He lost hope and it doesn't look good if he wants to stay out of jail. I'll give you the good, the bad, and what's next. So last week, Donald Trump lost hope, meaning Hope Hicks testified and gave some relatively damning testimony regarding his involvement and his apparent lies to her regarding Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. Look, when she is testifying after saying really nice things about him and then saying how he lied to her, because that's what ended up being the truth, is he did not tell her the truth about what was happening when that Access Hollywood story was coming out. She gave testimony that I think served well for the prosecution. She also gave testimony, by the way, that does serve the defense in saying that he would have wanted to keep that story away from Melania Trump. But let's get to what happened this morning in New York here on May the 6th, 2024. Judge Merchan, before the first witness was called, had his ruling regarding Trump's violation of the gag order that was heard last week. Now, I know a lot of you have been commenting, because remember, I read your comments, so give me them below, please. Have been commenting, why is this guy not already in jail? This guy meaning former President Donald J. Trump. He hasn't been in jail. It's really important to point this out because I think it's been missing in a lot of the reporting that's gone on related to this DA Alvin Bragg criminal trial against Donald J. Trump in New York. Thus far, in the gag order violations, when the prosecutors have brought the violations to Judge Merchan, they haven't asked for jail time. They've been asking for the maximum fine, which is $1,000 per violation. So that's really important for what happened today in court. When Judge Merchan gave his ruling, it was a $1,000 fine that has to be paid by this Friday by defendant Donald J. Trump to the court for the violation, which was he talked about the rapid selection of the jury, that they're 95% Democrats, which they're not, by the way. We don't know their political affiliation. And what's even kind of more stupid about what Donald Trump said on that odd network called Real America's Voice, by the way, this is Really American Network, which clearly is far superior to RAV. But the point is this, he made statements that we know are not true. Manhattan is not 95% Democrat. It's approximately 2/3. So for him to go on, make comments after being told about the gag order, which he knew about the gag order, and then said things that are inflammatory about the jury. Look, the judge was right to give him the fine. That's the maximum, $1,000. The most important thing out of this gag order ruling this morning is Judge Merchan, in writing, said in his order that Trump, clearly the fines are not having an impact. So next time we need to be looking at jail. The court will need to consider jail time against Donald J. Trump. I would wager that Trump is not going to be violating the gag order anymore, because the judge, just like parents have to do, we have to give warning, then we give the first infraction, second infraction. Now you're going to get very serious consequences, young man. I mean, hopefully he doesn't get spanked, and if the rumors are true, in the depends. So here he now faces potential jail. And I think that that's the right move now. He's had plenty of warnings. He's had plenty of fines. It's $10,000 total now in this trial. So the judge is right. So keep an eye out for that. I think that's a really important one. But today, Jeff McConney, the Trump Organization controller for 50 years, who is now retired, by the way, testified today, according to the reports out of the court, that his lawyers are still being paid for by the Trump Organization, and he was subpoenaed by the prosecution to testify today. So this is not exactly a turned prosecution witness, former controller for the Trump Organization. This is a guy who's still loyal, relatively speaking, to Donald Trump. who testified regarding the payments. I don't think that this was huge testimony for the benefit of the prosecution today. But again, what's interesting as we comment and as we observe what's happening in the courtroom, remember, this is a multi-week trial. The prosecution is building the foundation leading to Michael Cohen's testimony. Oh boy, Michael Cohen's testimony and Stormy Daniels' testimony. So we know that not everything that's going to be happening with these witnesses is blockbuster. It all builds. Think of it as a pyramid. We have to start with the foundation. We build the layers until we get to the peak, when we're going to get to the summation, essentially, of Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels, their testimony. This is what happened. Hope Hicks helped build that. We know it was really David Pecker was kind of the key here for building up to all of this, but it's going to be Michael Cohen. It's going to be Stormy Daniels. The former controller today validated a lot of the evidence that was entered into the record again, saying these checks were issued. We paid him $35,000 a month. I marked it as a legal expense, is what he testified today. Nobody told me to mark that as a legal expense. He was a lawyer, so I marked it as a legal expense. We don't know what was being done behind the scenes. Well, we do, because David Pecker testified to some of it. Michael Cohen's going to testify to some of it. And Michael Cohen has recordings that are going to help indicate to us what is going to be really, whether or not we're going to have the damning testimony or not. But again, we have false business records. It becomes a felony if it's tied with the intent to commit one of three crimes: federal election law, New York state election law, New York tax law. So if I'm misrepresenting what was entered into my books and it's done to say, oh, this was fully tax deductible because it was a legal expense, even though it was to pay off a porn star, with the intent to, prevent that information from coming out prior to an election, which can be alleged to be election interference. I mean, look, we know all of these things. But what's interesting is Trump was clever enough. Let's be honest. He was clever enough to pay his key people well. I'm talking about the Alan Weisselberg, who's in jail right now because of the Trump Organization civil trial with Letitia James, and his perjury is what he was convicted of, lying under oath. But also this guy, this McConney today, who is testifying, he was paid well enough. He's still loyal to Donald Trump. Trump cleverly paid the right people well enough to keep that kind of, so he's on their side, or they're on his side. This is really important. So what's the good, what's bad, and what's next? The good is the trial continues. Trump is now threatened with jail if he violates the gag order. I actually expect Judge Merchan to follow through with that if Donald Trump violates the gag order again. He was very careful talking to reporters today not to violate the gag order. So unlike what his counsel argued to the court, Trump is capable of saying no comment when he's threatened with jail. What's the bad? Again, it's going to be the same thing until we get to the end here. What is really the bad to me is it's not a clear line. This is going to come in the closing arguments. The prosecution has to tie this together neatly and make a clear, articulate argument that can be done in a couple of sentences to remind the jurors of all of the evidence that they saw and why they should convict Donald Trump. So what's next? We're going to find out who the next witnesses are. Remember, they're not giving us a heads up to protect these witnesses from the delusional pro-MAGA, pro-Trump people who want to threaten people, dox them, make their lives miserable. So I can't tell you who the next witness is, but we'll find out tomorrow in New York court. And I'll give you the best and the rest right here on Really Legal on the Really American Network. Look, click that like button. Give me your comments below. You know I read them. I love them. You've got to share this with your friends and family. It's so important to help us out here. If you like this content, to share it and to click those ad links, by the way, as you're watching. That is how revenue is generated with this work that we're doing right here. So look, help us out. I appreciate it. Appreciate you watching. Thank you so much. I'm attorney Ethan Bearman. This is Really Legal on the Really American Network.